It's almost done. It was a good day. We had Levi and Micah's birthday party. I think a good time was had by all. And now, as you can tell by the golden hour of light hitting the top of my head, that is almost sunset. And tomorrow, I have a ticket to Michael Perry's Brunch with a Sneezing Cow extravaganza. So, pretty stoked. Okay, I'm here. I got my books to sign. They're in a Ziploc bag. That's normal, right? And so we're going to go. It's a place called Gather on Broadway. And going to see Michael Perry, New York Times bestselling author from Auburn, Wisconsin. Population 485. Now it's like 562 or something. I think the doors open at 10. It's like 10:02 or 3 right now. I think I'm going the wrong way. All right. So I'm going the wrong way, but still a little time before it officially starts. So hopefully I'll get there.
Your destination is on the right.
Let's see here.
His best-selling memoirs include Population 485, Truck, A Love Story, and Visiting Tom. He hosts the nationally syndicated Tent Show Radio, performs widely as a humorist, and tours with his band, The Long Beds.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. Very grateful, so that I don't forget, to all the volunteers and all the folks who work so hard to pull this thing together. I have a thing that happens to me a lot. My books have done just well enough that, at least in Wisconsin, my name is semi-recognizable in certain discrete circles. But what happens is someone will say, "This is Michael Perry," and the person will say, "Oh, are you Michael Perry, the author?" And I say, "Well, yes." And they say, "Well, I haven't read your books." And this happens a lot, man, and so it always makes everybody involved a little uncomfortable. So I came up with the perfect answer, which is someone will say, "Well, I haven't read your books," and I say, "That's okay. Millions of people haven't." And it always gets a little chuckle, so that's nice. Plus, it has the added benefit of being absolutely true. That worked great for years, until one day I was at a very high-toned literary academic event with my friend Frank. Frank has known me forever. He has no illusions about my character or my quality, and he doesn't mind letting me know what he thinks. And I got introduced to a woman who's the head of a very prominent academic institution, and she had a whole bunch of letters at the end of her name. And they said, "This is Michael Perry," and this woman said, "Oh, are you Michael Perry, the author?" And I said, "Oh, well, yeah." And she said, "Well, I haven't read your books." And I said, "That's okay, millions of people haven't." And got the little chuckle as usual. And then I felt an elbow in the ribs, and it was my friend Frank. And he leans over and he goes, "Actually, Mike, it would be billions." True, but not necessary to point out. But the other reason is that my hair was still real long and back, but it started to get thin on top. And I was looking in the mirror one day and I thought, "Man, you really got to cut that off. You're headed for the Ben Franklin look." But I hadn't made the move yet. And then we got paged out to fight a grass fire on the railroad tracks south of town. And I was right up in the teeth of the flames, knocking it down, fighting from the black, as any well-trained wildland firefighter will tell you that you must. But I was right up in there, and all of a sudden one of the other firefighters ran up and started patting me. Now normally, you don't get a lot of that. So I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Man, your hair's on fire." And indeed, it was crackling right along. So at that point, I thought, if it ain't falling out, it's bursting into flames. Cut it off. New Auburn has only one softball field and no lights on that softball field. And over the years, the tournament has become very popular. So in order to get all the teams through the brackets, they have to start playing softball at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. They play all day long until dark. Then they resume play at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning and play all day long until the tournament has been resolved. So shortly after I moved back, I get assigned the duty of going down to the park on Sunday morning of Jamboree days to clean up the beer tent, get it ready for the day. And the chief sends me down there with one of the old timers on the department, a guy named Bob, the One-Eyed Beagle. And the One-Eyed Beagle gets his nickname from the fact that he is severely cross-eyed. When I say severely, I mean that one eye is not just a little bit off. It is shot. If his good eye is looking due south, that other eye is looking due east. And there's times when I describe him that there's a certain tension in the room, discomfort. I've even had people come up to me afterward and say it's insensitive of you, the way that you describe him. And all I can say to them is, he's aware, okay? He's checked it out in the mirror from both angles. And we're buddies. I mean, I just yesterday picked up venison sausage from him, that he's a butcher. And so, plus the other thing about him and my insensitivity, this is one of those guys, and you all know this guy. That eye is the least of his problems. This is a guy who's got one eye, one kidney, and two ex-wives, both of whom work at the only gas station in town. So he's got to run 9 miles south to Bloomer every morning for gas, coffee, and chew, because they just won't serve him at the home place. But anyway, me and the Beagle, we get sent down to the park on Sunday morning Jamboree days to clean up the beer tent, get it ready for the day. We're in the beer tent, we're picking up paper plates and plastic cups and napkins, and this guy wanders in off the street. Not a softball player, just a civilian. It's 8:30 a.m., the first softball game of the day is already underway. And this guy walks up to our little bar and he says, "Can I get a beer?" And I said, "Well, it is 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but Beagle, you've been on the department longer, you make the command decision." And so the Beagle says, "Well, I guess there's no law against it." And he goes around behind our little makeshift bar and he draws the guy a beer and he sets it down. The guy hands his money over, he puts both elbows on the plywood, he raises the beer to his lips, and he's just about to take a pull at the phone when he hears the crack of the bat on the softball field adjacent, and he freezes. And then he looks, then he brings his lips back in line with the beer, which has not moved, and says, "A little early in the morning for softball." And it was at that point that I said, "Yes, I'm back among my people." But then I talk in the Montaigne book about the paradox of being a writer, a freelancer, and you just got to create material. And there are times, and I write about anxiety and panic attacks in the Montaigne book, and what it's like at 3 a.m. to look across the darkened yard and see this farmhouse and know that there are 3 hearts beating in there who assume that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and that we're going to be able to make the bills. And I haven't had anything all day long, and I freak out. And so what happens then at 3 a.m. is you go, "Well, I got to give them something," and then you think that one really awful thing you don't want to talk about, and you go, "Well, they'll probably pay for that." And so you put it down, and then you have these horrible moments where someone comes up to you at a signing and they say, "Hey, how's that irregularity?" And some people here know what I'm referring to. And I'm like, "How did you know about that?" And they said, "Well, you wrote about it." And I say, "Well, I shouldn't have." And so I'm going to close with a piece that is terribly inartistic. I think you've mostly finished what you're eating, but is absolutely born out of the desperation of sharing whatever it takes. Outside Magazine asked 13 writers to describe the greatest calamity they'd ever faced in the wild. There were stories of avalanches, 60-foot waves, and guerrilla war gunfire. All I can say is, everything is relative. Boy, I hope there's a lot of folks here that at least spent a little time camping or something. I learned to defecate in the woods while I was still in single digits. Our small Wisconsin farm was surrounded by hundreds of acres of swamp and forest, and my siblings and I were often out of washroom range when the urge struck. We became precocious connoisseurs of organic cleansing media. Wipeability factors varied. Oak leaves gave good coverage, but their slickness limited absorption. Pine needles were worthless, even injurious, but had the benefit of smelling like tree-shaped air fresheners. Moss was fragile, soggy, and sandy, but it had a decent swab factor. Finally, I can say without reservation that a fat handful of poison ivy leaves did the job quite nicely. The initial job, that is. The sequelae, to use a physician's term, were untenable. I was 14, which, given my experience toileting al fresco, made my mistake doubly knot-headed. Grandpa had taken a passel of us to a riverside swimming hole. I still remember squatting in the bushes before jumping in, prospecting for leaves after it was too late to relocate. The only trees within reach were pines, so I groped behind me and felt a clump of flat, wide leaves. Bingo. It took a while for the itching to commence. Early on, I felt squirmy twinges of an intimate nature, but hey, what's new? Back home 2 hours later, I was race walking around the living room, fully prepared to drop my shorts and do the naughty puppy carpet scoot. Cross-eyed and panting, I racked my brain and reviewed the day. When I got around to reenacting the outdoor toilet session, I blanched. I wound up with such a blistering case that I was taken to a clinic for corticosteroid shots. The doctor also prescribed a topical cream and instructed my mother, a nurse, to apply it daily. Florence Nightingale herself wouldn't have showed up for that gig. I spent a week sleeping on my stomach, fitful and straddle-legged. Standard bathroom procedure went out the window, replaced by a wincing gavotte in which I lowered myself to the seat, did the deed, drew a baking soda bath, and delicately cleansed and patted myself dry. One misstep and I would collapse into a seizure of spastic monkey scratching. Years later, I came across a poster in a Nashville print shop that said, "It's not the burning, it's the itching, man." And I thought, amen. For a long time, the fact that I'd wiped my hinder with poison ivy was my little secret. I have to believe Mom had her suspicions, even though I explained it away by saying I backed into the stuff while changing into my bathing suit. She kept a log of my childhood illnesses, and the entry for August 7th, 1979 says, "Poison ivy, lower trunk." Thanks a bunch. I will, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I also don't know about the schedule. If I can't find it right away, I won't make you wait. But I think the reason that they are having to do it opens with the line, "Perhaps you fail to assume, but I owe the sublimated bulk of my aesthetic construct to Prince Rogers Nelson, circa Purple Rain." And I then go on, and in this essay I expand upon the idea that, yeah, looking at me and looking at my oeuvre, you wouldn't necessarily think he had a big influence on me, but he did. He completely reframed my vision of what it was to be an artist, what it was to be Midwestern. I'll stop there because that's what went on. But in the book here, I refer to it briefly, this essay, I'm expanding upon it. And I'm also writing about the idea of that tricky business of writing something about someone famous who dies and what they meant to you, and that you're actually leveraging their fame and even possibly appropriating their true friends and family's actual difficult grief. And yet, I remember the moment I found out that he died. I was at my writing desk, and I had written that paragraph about how much he meant to me a week before he died. So I came by honestly. It wasn't something I cooked up after the fact, and I can prove it because I posted it on my blog a week before he died. And I just remember when I heard that news that it just felt like some energy disappeared from the world. And I just said, I'm pretty boots on the ground logger type, but I believe in some of that stuff. And there was just this sense that he was over there. And Minneapolis is close enough to me that it's over there. And he was over there and he was working. I got up from my desk, I got an old pickup truck, and I drove down the road to my buddy's place, and there's a guy there, an engineer, and he and I are friends, and he worked for Prince for a stint. And we just took 5 minutes, nothing dramatic. We just, he talked about what it was like to work with him, and I talked about what it was like to have seen that movie at that time in my life, and how it led in part to me getting to be a writer when I didn't even know that was possible. And so this is why I've made a living on going off on tangents. The question was actually very brief. The second thing I'm working on is the sequel to The Scavengers. The rough draft for that, that's a book I wrote for young readers. Young readers, by the way, from 9 to 99 and beyond. But I have to hand that rough draft in on May 8th. Anybody else? Yes?
Well, it just wrapped up, and now they're having a book signing. So I'm gonna try to get my book signed. So pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. Oh, well, that was fun. Got to talk to him a little bit, and then Michael Perry, that is, and it was a delightful brunch. The table I sat with was pretty fun. Older people. It seemed like a lot of people from EWGB seem to like people who teach there. And so a learned crowd. It was fun. And I sat at a good table because they were really, it was a great audience there. They were really laughing it up. This one woman she drove from Milwaukee to go to this, and she was just doubling over on the table laughing. I think you could probably hear that in some of the video that I took. And so it was a delightful time. I sat next to the mother of the person who set up the festival. Also, I guess he's also the owner of Kavarna. So she was delightful, very delightful person. I think her name was Janice, and she was great. Very interesting to talk with, and she noticed I was taking a video of my coffee, and she's like, "Isn't it great that you take appreciation for just a simple cup of coffee?" And that's how we hit off the conversation. So it was a great experience, really interesting to see how an author does like a book signing and a book reading, and to experience that live was really cool. And believe it or not, even though there's a load of snow on the ground still, it's hot. I'm gonna have to go. Final thoughts. So don't walk. You want to run to your local independent bookstore and pick up some Michael Perry, or go to his website, and that is sneezingcow.com. Achoo! And let's make this guy some moolah. Thanks.